Hello everyone, and welcome back to Just the Tips, my Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous Tips and Guides series. Today we're going to be covering Leper's Smile, which is a zone in Act 2. There are a ton of encounters here that are particularly rough. It's very repetitive. You fight swarm after swarm. And then right at the end of it, you have the Vescavor Queen, which is an absolute nightmare to deal with on unfair. So this guide is going to focus mostly on things that you can do to make your run much, much easier. Starting with entering the zone in the first place. So prior to entry, you'll have this RP sequence kick up, and you have some choices to make. The most important choice here is who you send, or who you put in command of the unit that is going to be delaying the Vescavor swarm. So you have a bunch of choices here as to who to pick. But what I found was that the best outcome would result from sending Sosiel and having him stand his ground. All the other characters that are options here result in massive troop losses or the death of the character themselves, which you probably don't want, right? You don't want Irabeth, you don't want Nura dying, you don't want Lan dying, right? So Sosiel really is the best choice here. And if you want to RP it out, just read what they're saying before they go in, right? Every single character gives you their reasons for going in, and you get some insight into their underlying motivations. So, for example, Nura wants to prove herself. Sosiel, he thinks he's a healer, he's best for the job. Irabeth thinks it's her duty to do this. Lan, he straight up says, I want to die or prove myself. So really, if you read it out, if you read the character's motivations and reasons, it's very clear that Sosiel is the only choice. And then, right, Regil as well. We ran into him in the Gargoyle Cave, and you obviously don't want to put him in command of a unit where tough choices will have to be made. He really doesn't value life, and he will gladly sacrifice not only his own men, but himself if it comes down to it. So that's what you want to avoid, right? You want to get out of this with the least number of casualties. And so Sosiel is the best choice. Alright, let's move into the zone. Inside the zone itself, you're tasked with defeating several swarms. There are at least, I want to say, maybe 10 or 12 of these things. And they are not fun to deal with. And there's a reason for that. One of them, right, if you happen to get so the first swarm you encounter is a solo swarm, pretty easy to deal with, but it doesn't give you an idea of why swarms are difficult. Now, swarms are difficult because only one swarm can attack one character at a time. What that means is that if there are two swarms engaging your party, only one swarm can attack your main tank. And what that means is that the second swarm is going to go straight for your back line and attack them. Now, it would be, it's enough of a problem if the only issue was the swarm attacking your characters, just doing physical damage to them or disease damage or whatever. But that's not the case. These swarms have a proximity effect wherein any characters within, I don't know what the exact range is, but any characters within a certain proximity to them become confused, right? You saw that Gibber will save. So if it walks into your party, right, if you have your entire party clumped together and you have no way of preventing the confusion, it will confuse almost your entire party, and then they will start attacking each other and stuff like that. And it makes handling these more than one swarm at a time an absolute nightmare if you're doing, a standard tank and backline setup as I am. So one way I found to cheese these swarms, to cheese this fight, involves switching the game to turn-based mode and doing what I'm doing here. I'm stutter stepping. So what I noticed is that the swarms can only attack you if they are right on top of you. And even if they have to move one step to get on top of you, they will move that one step, but they will not attack you in the same turn. So what that means for you is you, who can move more than one step and attack in the same turn, can use that to your advantage. So you walk out of the swarm, turn around, give it a smack, it'll walk onto you, and then you walk out of it, turn around, give it a smack, and it'll walk onto you, and just have the rest of your characters hang back and do nothing. Just keep them in stealth and don't do anything with them. If you attack the swarm with any of these backline characters, the swarm that is not currently engaging you in combat will run straight for them. So just keep them out of combat and have your main tank handle the swarm. So there is one very important thing that you require here: the Bookworm's Headband. And it is a super important item because it makes you immune to mind-altering effects, and confusion is a mind-altering effect, so it makes you immune to confusion, your main tank. So you can pick that up in the Crusader camp. I believe it's found in the infirmary tent, the vendor in the infirmary tent, over there where, I forgot his name, but that's where you pick it up. It's pretty expensive, but you definitely want it for this place. Otherwise, I can't imagine doing this on Unfair without this, right? So that's it for the swarms. And then finally, there is the question of loot in this place. There are some spectacular items that you can pick up in here, and they're scattered in the various nooks and crannies of this canyon. Each kind of section of the canyon or subsection of the canyon contains some dead caravanners that are carrying some really good loot. Like, for example, this ring of stitches, which makes you completely immune to bleed. The issue is, if you pick up any of the good loot, you lose crusade morale and troops. And if you were to loot all the items that cause morale loss, your army would be absolutely decimated by the time you came out of the other side of Leper's Mouth. So you don't want to do that. So there are two ways you can handle this. Either you can just not loot any of it, or you can do what I do. And so I discovered that if you exit the container that contains the item, that is what triggers the morale loss. It isn't the act of looting the individual item. It isn't the act of interacting with the container or the body in the first place. It is the act of exiting the container after you have picked everything up. So what I discovered is that you can exit the container without morale loss by opening your inventory. So, before you loot anything in any of these crevasses, make sure you save the game, and then after that, pick up the items, pick up the 2 containers that don't cause any morale loss, just collect all on those, and then the one that does cause morale loss, look through it, find the most valuable items, and pick one item that you want to leave behind, loot the other items that do not cause, that you want, and leave that one item behind, and then just open your inventory, and that will cause you to leave that one item behind, and you can use that to loot all the valuable items here, in here. And there's some really good stuff that you definitely want. So I highly recommend doing this. I don't know if they're going to fix it in upcoming patches or anything like that, but yeah, for now, definitely make use of it, especially if you're playing on Unfair, right? The game wants to be unfair. you can be unfair right back, right? You're just making use of mechanics. That's what I like to say. But yeah, so that's it for the loot here. So in addition to the loot, so I mentioned that you do lose Crusaders, you do lose a lot of your morale by picking items up. So one other way you lose morale is by helping this guy here, who's fallen into a crevasse and he's being eaten by Vescavors. I felt sorry for him and I saved him. I don't know if down the line that's going to provide me with any sort of benefit, but I just felt terrible. Like, I could not bring myself to leave him to die. So I just ate the 5 morale loss. I was not able to find a way to prevent the morale loss here, unfortunately. But yeah, so I do what you will with this guy. And let's move on to the main course, which is the Vescavor Queen. Alright, with the Vescavor Queen here, I'm sorry about the quality of the footage. The reason it's so bad is because I found out that I could attempt 5 slumbers, 5 full cycles per minute, as opposed to 3 by turning the settings down, and I was losing my mind. It took me about an hour and a half to pull this off. As with a lot of the previous encounters that I've done, right, the Cambion Alchemist, with Vrock, with the big Minotaur in Minago's Labyrinth, I use Slumber to make the fight possible. This would be impossible to tank and spank for my party. I'm sure there are builds that might allow you to tackle it head on, but that ain't me, Chief. So all you really have to do here, all you have to know is, you know, Slumber. The issue here is the DC save of the Vescavor Queen is 25. There's really no way you can get Ember's DC up that high on Slumber. So you are dependent on her rolling a natural 1. And so that's a 1 in 20 chance. And if it was that alone, it would still be painful, but then the second the fight starts, Anevia runs in and starts shooting at it, and if she hits it, well, then it wakes up, and you don't get a chance to coup de grace. So it's really a bunch of things that have to fall into place here, right? 1 in 20 chance of Slumber going off. Anevia gets 2 shots off, assuming your character is standing close enough not to be aggroed from stealth. So those 2 shots have to miss. She has a good chance of missing, but she, you also have a good chance of failing the Slumber. And then after that, you have to land the DC on your coup de grace and execute her. So it's 3 things that really have to fall into place for this to be possible. I will tell you, it took me about an hour and 40 minutes of just repeated Slumber and attempting coup de grace to get it down. And that was with my settings turned down, so I was able to attempt it 5 times per minute. If I was just, repeatedly casting Slumber. Obviously, fewer times per minute if one of the Slumbers goes off, and I'm able to attempt a coup de grace. But with just Slumber, load, Slumber, load, Slumber, load, Slumber, load, I could do that 5 times a minute on minimum settings. So I do recommend you turn the settings down there to save yourself some sanity. But that's really it for the Vescavor Queen, and that's actually it for my guide on Leper Smile. Hopefully you have some, good luck. You're able to get this done. I will say that the caves below Leper Smile there are some enemies down there that are an absolute nightmare, but I do recommend you go into the undead section after taking down the Vescavor Queen and just completing that. You can forget the Vescavor side initially and come back and tackle that later, but definitely go do the undead section before you proceed with the story. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.